Welcome to Shoemaker Lab. I'm Dane Shoemaker. This is the official podcast of Shoemaker Films. On this podcast, what we do is share marketing tips for business owners. We often interview local entrepreneurs and creatives in the greater Philadelphia area as well as beyond. We often share thoughts and experiences on our own entrepreneurial journey as well. So if that's something that's interesting to you or valuable, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you also follow us on Instagram, shoemaker.films. So today's podcast, what we're doing is talking about really, it's a continuation from last week, which was around interview tips for people being interviewed by a company like us, right? So that might be some video that we send to people that we might be interviewing for brand story, maybe a documentary, maybe social media content, right? Today, we're going to be talking about tips for interviewers. So if you are a video producer or a filmmaker, or you're, maybe you're a marketing person at your company and you want to interview stakeholders at your business, these are some tips that we've picked up along the way in interviewing hundreds of people for either our clients or even guests for this podcast, right? We're going to go through them. There's 9 tips that we're going to be talking about. So let's jump in. So the first one is really to have a goal or direction in mind. Obviously, if you've gotten to the point where you're sitting down to interview someone, you already have a video that you're doing this for, right? Or a film or a documentary, right? So by that point, there should be a goal in mind with identifying who you are interviewing, right? What are the stakeholders? So let's say for a brand video for a company, we would usually interview the owners, right? Presidents, right? Key leadership. We might also be interviewing specific department heads. Maybe there's just, somebody at the company that's really enthusiastic about working there and they have a great story about how they started working there and we want to interview that person. Oftentimes there's going to be a lot of customer testimonials as well. So we bring in a customer. Maybe they have a great story about working with a company that we want to capture on video, right? So really think about who are the people that we're interviewing? Why are we interviewing them? And then from there, you want to do a lot of research, right? What's their role? What do they care about? What's their story? Typically having a pre-interview is a really good idea. So whether that's the production company is actually doing a pre-interview with somebody, or maybe it's the contact at the company that we're working with, like the marketing team will often kind of vet people. We will have already decided on the questions on the day of the interview. So typically a couple weeks in advance, we're trading emails around, hey, what are the 10-ish questions that we're going to be asking this person? And those are already vetted and they're not generic, right? They're very specific to that person's role, their story, and it's meant to kind of elicit kind of the key things that we want to get out of that interview. What are some good sound bites? What are some things that we're expecting to get from this interview? So research, do a pre-interview, and have a goal in mind, right, for this person. When you actually sit down with the person that you're interviewing, it can be very uncomfortable, right? And we talked a little bit about this last week's podcast, but for someone being interviewed, there's a couple cameras, right? There's lights, there's a microphone. You might have half a dozen people standing behind you while you're being interviewed. That can be very intimidating. It's not natural. It might be very uncomfortable for them, right? So your job as the interviewer really is to make them feel comfortable, right? So you want to have just a couple tips here. So what we like to do, this is something that I've picked up over the years, is after that person is sitting, they're starting to sit down, you might want to kind of show them around a little bit. Hey, here's the main camera, but you're going to be looking at me, so don't worry about the camera. Maybe show them, a little bit, hey, here's the setup, here's a light here. Kind of have a conversation with them. And almost, you might even want to pretend like you're tweaking things and kind of go like, hey, this is looking great. By the way, how's your day going so far? Try and, maybe crack some jokes. You want to be professional, but you also want to make them feel at ease, right? So a good way to do that is to kind of do like almost like a fake check on the cameras, right? Looking at things, okay, things are looking real good right now. And then you sit down, right? You're going to sit down, maybe start just kind of asking questions. Oh, how's your day going so far? What are your plans for later? Things like that. Maybe just a nice comment. Oh, I like that shirt, by the way. That's nice. Or your earrings are nice or whatever, right? So Just something nice to kind of make them feel at ease, right? You might also want to introduce them to the team. So, if I'm going to be the one interviewing, I'm going to be, hey, my name's Dane, right? Oh, by the way, there's John behind me. There's Susie, right? There's Bob, right? Just kind of introduce them to the team, make them feel comfortable, right? We're all humans here. Sitting down to be interviewed is not a normal thing. So do your best to just be a human, right? Introduce people, ask them how their day is going. By that point, the camera is already rolling, right? And you want to get into your questioning at that point, right? So again, the key here, make them feel comfortable. If we go to standard, best practices around questioning, it's kind of like a funnel, right? So you, at the top, you're going to be asking questions more open-ended, right? So, we'll call open questions, right? So questions designed to get them, talking. You might want to start off with a couple easy questions. Hey, what's your name? What's your role at the company? Simple things to get them rolling, but then ask those big questions and kind of say, so tell me about your role at this company. What is your thoughts on this topic that the video is about, right? Really get them to talk. And then from there, you kind of zero in. You go to open-ended questions, you go to probing questions, and then you go to the closed questions where it's really a yes or no question at that point, right? After you kind of get them talking a little bit more, they're comfortable, they're talking about, kind of openly about whatever the topic of the video is, right? Then you want to get into some more probing questions, right? You want to zero in on stuff, right? Follow up, right? Don't just ask a question and then just move on to the next questions. You really got to zero in on stuff. Now, granted, it depends on how much time you have with this individual. You might have a tight timeline. If you get the sound bites, hopefully the director's behind you or a producer, and they're saying like, okay, we got what we need here. But don't be afraid to ask follow-up questions. Oh, can you clarify that a little bit more, or tell me more about that? Or if you're the interviewer, you might want to summarize something. Did I get that right? Just kind of clarify. What criteria did you get to that point, or how did that make you feel, right? Or tell me why you did that. Just ask questions and kind of get them talking a little bit more. And then we get to the closed questions. So if you're looking at this funnel again, right? Open-ended questions, probing questions, and then closed questions. Closed questions really are essentially yes or no questions. Now, in a documentary or a brand film, that's not really, you don't need footage of people saying yes or no. That's not going to do anything to drive the story forward. But if you can ask them a question that says, where they can agree with that, yes, that is, so for example, a closed question would be, do you like working here? Yes. The answer is yes. Okay. Well, they need to repeat that as a sentence, right? So, you basically have to feed them the answer, hey, I love working at this company, and just get them to repeat that, right? I love working at this company. And then you've gotten to the point where that's a closed question. It's really just a sentence at that point. The next thing is really more why questions, right? Just kind of underline the importance of asking more why questions, right? Essentially, if we're telling a story, it's a documentary, we want people to feel something when they're watching the video, right? So just being a journalist, right? What, who, when, how is not really going to drive the story forward. You need to be asking more why questions. Why did you do that? Why did you feel that way? Why do you feel this way about the company? How does this make you feel when you're working here, right? We really want to dive into more probing, but really just the why behind some of these answers, right? Another tip, so dead air chicken, if you're familiar with this, is actually, this is something that we would practice in sales, years ago. I mean, basically, you might ask a question and then the interviewee gives you an answer, then that's it. So instead of you asking the next question or even asking a probing question, it might just be you just shut up. You just don't talk. You ask a question, they give a response, acknowledge it, and then it might incur them to keep talking. It's just a tactic. You don't want to abuse that. Obviously, we have a job to do, right? We have a goal to hit. You don't want to be sitting there in dead silence, making it awkward, but oftentimes, if you are quiet, they will keep talking. You don't want it to be an interrogation. We kind of brought this up already, but ask follow-up questions, acknowledge, right? So when they say something, be like, oh, that's really interesting. Okay, can you tell me more about that, right? You're having a conversation. This isn't an interrogation, right? They're not in trouble. You're not sitting there just asking question after question after question. Sometimes it can feel like that, and I'm definitely at fault of doing that in the past. But again, it's got to be a conversation between two human beings. Active listening is very important. So that's the next thing. So basically, you want to be acknowledging, right? I just mentioned that. You want to be acknowledging the responses, nodding your head, smiling, commentary when it makes sense. Oh, that's really interesting. Oh, that's amazing. Wow, that's great. Be authentic, right? And you want to be energetic. Don't just be sitting back like you're, like it's a job, right? It's boring. You want to be genuinely engaged, genuinely interested, right? Leaning forward, nodding, smiling, right? Again, you're having a conversation. You want to make them feel like, you're being listened to. And that's really important. The more comfortable they feel, the more they feel like you are listening, the more they're going to share about, whatever the film is about, right? The last tip is keep the camera rolling, right? You actually want to, get the camera recording before they even sit down, and you want to keep the camera recording long after the interview is officially over, right? Because oftentimes what will happen, okay, that's a wrap. You let the camera rolling, then they might actually share something else, like maybe something a little off the cuff, or someone else behind the interviewer might start asking questions, or they start shooting the shit a little bit with one of their coworkers, and you get some really good audio that you could potentially use. So don't just cut and stop recording as soon as the interview is done. Let it roll for a little bit until they're up out of their seat and out of the room. So that's really important. Hopefully this was some helpful tips for interviewing individuals for a documentary or a brand story, or any type of video, right? So 9 tips, we'll summarize them here. And again, if you have any questions for Shoemaker Films, if you want to work with us, please make sure to get in touch. Shoemakerfilms.com. Please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for future episodes. Thanks a lot. Thanks for listening today. Shoemaker Lab is an original production by Shoemaker Films, LLC. If you enjoyed today's content, please consider subscribing on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you get your content. Follow us on Instagram at shoemaker.films. And if you're a business that's either interested in our video production services or would like to be a guest on the show, get in touch by using the contact form on our website, shoemakerfilms.com.